We are hearing a lot about intimate partner violence. More survivors, more reported incidents. Social worker and guidance counselor Stefanie Peachey joins us now with help on how to get help, or maybe how to get out safely. That's the number one goal.
That's the number one goal, ultimately, yes, is for women to be out of these abusive relationships. And I say women, statistically we know male to female violence is greater, but yes, to be out of these relationships and to live a life that feels a little bit better.
Because there are all kinds of emergency supports for survivors. You don't like to call them victims, we call them survivors, to deal with. But you, in a private practice, kind of take that next step to kind of build confidence again. And make sure that it doesn't happen. You don't slip into a pattern of thinking, that's okay, that was all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the women that come to us, generally speaking, are out of the crisis mode. So we're fortunate we have a lot of services available in Burlington and Halton.
And Burlington is where you're based, yeah.
Yes, I'm in Burlington, and there are fantastic services. So oftentimes when women come to our practice, they're in a point of the crisis has ended, they're perhaps in a safe space. Although not all the time. I will say sometimes we have women come in that we're actually recognizing the relationship as abusive for them, and we're starting that process with them of referrals and supporting them. But the goal ultimately, of course, is for women to be out of these relationships, or anybody else who's experiencing this type of relationship.
We had Burlington Mayor Marianne Mead Ward on a bit ago because the city has declared it an epidemic.
Yes.
And she was talking about, that intimate partner violence doesn't mean a slap or a punch necessarily.
Yes.
It's got the whole gamut of things.
Yes.
It's control.
It's control. There's a lot of control that happens, and a lot of women that come to us will say things like, it's not like I've been hit, right? It's not that bad. And a lot of our work is really talking to women about what is abuse ultimately. There's mental abuse, there's verbal abuse, of course, there's financial abuse, but some of those lesser obvious forms of abuse really need to be paid attention to, because women feel very controlled, isolated, worried. A lot of really unhealthy behaviors are happening that maybe aren't always recognized for what they are.
And maybe you don't recognize them because maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe you've grown up that way, that this is just what happens in a relationship.
Yes, we see that a lot, is when we refer to like breaking that cycle, is a lot of people that we've worked with, and I've worked with historically at other agencies, will recognize this as something that they grew up with, right? So the standard maybe of a relationship is shifted, and that's not to say it's that person's fault by any means, but our childhood experiences absolutely impact us. And what we see, we often accept as normal, or what someone will say is, well, it wasn't as bad as. And so they minimize it themselves because there's a lot of shame attached to it.
A lot of shame.
And so it's really complicated. And as I say these things, certainly not to say that ever it's a woman's fault or the person who's experiencing it, but there's a lot that goes into developing this really unhealthy, abusive relationship that even the person in it can't always recognize, because it's a lot.
But sometimes friends and family can.
Friends and family can help, yes. So I generally speak to people about naming observable behaviors, right? We never want to go in and tell somebody what to do. One of the biggest things is to say, this is what I'm seeing, this is why I'm concerned, and asking, how can I help? The last thing that survivors need is somebody coming in and saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. Because then there's another person that they feel pressured to, accommodate or to follow. Yeah. And to never assume that it's easy for somebody to leave. Leaving is one of the greatest barriers, because we could spend so much time on that alone, but it's not as simple as I'm just going to leave. There's financial constraints, there's children, and there's just a lot of complicating pieces about what it is to be in this relationship in the first place, so it's not simple. So I think really, as somebody coming in, recognize that it's not simple for this person. Ask how you can help. Be a part of their safety plan. Safety plans are critical. Can you be a person that this person can come to when they feel unsafe? Can you be somebody that they check in with to say, I've arrived at my destination, or once a day say, I'm good, everything's fine today, or whatever the case may be. But to offer that genuine caring support and asking, how can I help, is really important.
Because getting rid of this shame and this, and we hear so many agencies as well, like be more than a bystander.
Be more than a bystander.
If you see something like that happening,
yes,
just maybe take the survivor aside and say, like, okay, here's, this isn't normal for me. Is that normal for you? Maybe that's a way of...
Absolutely. And, I've seen this, or I've seen your behavior change. I've seen a bit of fear. I've seen, nervousness. What have you seen that's caused the concern? And recognize that the person might shut you down for the first little while, right? They've worked likely very hard to conceal this. Yes. So be there, be consistent, be the person who's offering help, and allow them to go at their own pace.
Okay, Stefanie, we've run out of time, but so much good advice here. And we'll get all your links up on our website at chch.com/morninglive.